What if your organization had the instincts of a beehive, able to sense stress before it hits, close cycles cleanly, and move as one when disruption arrives? Today in the Business Emergency Room, we're looking at leadership through one of the smartest systems in nature, the beehive. I'm joined by beekeeper, author, and leadership coach Philip Atkinson, and we're unpacking what bees can teach us about structure, seasons, purpose, signals, and how to actually work better together. If you love metaphors that make business clearer, you are going to love this one. Leadership today isn't just about scaling. It's about navigating constant uncertainty, market disruptions, and high-pressure decisions. If you're dealing with chaos, bottlenecks, and relentless pressure, welcome to the Business Emergency Room. Hey, thanks for tuning in today. I'm very excited about today's episode because we are going to talk about bees and beehives and how bees and beehives are excellent metaphors for business and what we can learn from that. And in order to talk about all these things, I'm here today with Philip Atkinson. He is a beekeeper, but he's also a man in business. He is the founder of Hive Logic, which is a coaching and communications company based out of Basel in Switzerland. He's talking to us today from northeastern France. But you're originally British, right, Philip?
That's correct, Maartje. Yes.
Correct. Yeah. So still better English than my English. And we are going to talk about his book. I put an infinite amount of sticky notes in it because I found lots of it very interesting. The book is called BeeWise, 12 Leadership Lessons from a Busy Beehive. Philip is not here with a commercial purpose because actually all the proceeds from the book go to a good cause. They go to Bees for Development. So the money from the book actually goes to the bees. The wisdom from the book, though, is for us. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So, Philip, thank you for joining me today. Welcome.
It's good to be here. Thank you very much.
Everybody who regularly tunes into this podcast know that I love metaphors and lenses, that I love looking at our world, from a fresh perspective. So before we dive into the details of the book, can you summarize for us what gave you the idea to write about businesses and organizations from the perspective or make that comparison to bees and beehives and the wisdom of bees?
Yes, thank you. Just a quick story. A long time ago, I started studying organizational design and change and coaching for work. And I wanted to study something nothing to do with work. And I became a beekeeper on Monday nights. And I studied in my weekends, nothing to do with work. Fast forward, of course, I was sitting outside my office one day on a hot summer's day, people coming and going like bees, people carrying briefcases with ideas. Inside it was noisy. There was communication, there was decision-making, there was different roles, diversity. And all of a sudden it hit me that beekeeping is not separate to work. It's a very, very good metaphor. And I started using the metaphor of beekeeping to help teams have better quality conversations. And it began from there, and it rolls and rolls. It's a great metaphor for helping businesses and teams and leaders have better quality conversations about the important work we need to do.
Yeah, and it's so common, right? The skills we learn in our hobbies or in other facets of life, of course, they're relevant and helpful in the workplace. I'm personally a sailor, a skipper, and I definitely, to me, that was my hobby, right? But I totally also see the complete analog to the workplace and to leadership. And there's plenty of tools that I learned in that space that I pulled over. You don't necessarily operate in the space of change. We're here in a business ER, right, where typically there is turmoil and change and mayhem. So you start the book around the organization, right, the organizational structure and the structure of the beehive. Can you talk to me a little bit about why to you that's the start, or that's maybe, to me, if you talk about starts and ends in the book too, but if you start that metaphor, why do you start there? And does it feel to you that that is more important to steady state operational businesses, or to any business to start at the structure?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. First of all, I'm not advocating that we all behave like bees. So I don't want to behave like a queen bee. And that's how the book starts, actually. An old model of looking at a beehive was that the queen is at the top. And that was actually a British Victorian model 100 years ago. And it happened there was Queen Victoria in charge of a whole commonwealth and an empire, and people thought the queen bee was in charge of the whole hive from the top, knowing more, having better information, having better quality decisions. Now, the world of work is changing, and hierarchy and command and control is not the only model, and not necessarily the best model. It has served us well for 150 years since the Industrial Revolution. But new ways of work is actually all about servant leadership and delegating and allowing responsibility to distill down to the level of people who are the experts. So this chapter is actually all about acknowledging new structures and new organizations. Let's talk about agility. Let's talk about different models, or let's talk about servant leadership. In actual fact, the queen bee we now realize through a new lens, you mentioned lenses, she doesn't control the hive from the top. She serves it from the bottom. All the queen bee really, she lays the eggs, but with her pheromones and hormones, she creates the right atmosphere for everyone else to be at their best.
Yeah, and she's physically based in the bottom of the hive also, right? She's not at the top at all.
Physically, yes. She hides in the dark at the bottom.
Yeah, and what I found intriguing is that you also write that the other bees actually create a barrier to ensure that she doesn't make it to other parts.
Yes, she's actually very well controlled by the hard-working bees who actually know best. Yes.
Yeah, and I think there's plenty of people in the workplace who would love to create some access control for their bosses to not come and meddle, huh?
Yeah, don't let the CEO loose.
No. You in the book you also you have your 12 leadership lessons, and they're structured by seasons, and it's very clear that the seasons matter, right? In this concept as to what you're working on and what's changing, and then you actually, every chapter also has a guest, right, who responds to your description, and one of them points out that nature, of course, and the bees get their cues from the world that things are changing, and hence that they maybe need to change or have gotten into a new season, and we in our cubicles don't quite get the same signals anymore. So can you talk a bit through how we need to maybe relearn some of that, or how do we in the workplace facilitate that better, that we maybe go more with whatever the seasons are in our business?
The seasons in nature are so important because there's a cycle, a beginning and a middle and an end. And at work, I want everyone to pay more attention to a beginning, a middle, and an end, and particularly the endings. Let's talk about a new project. The beginning of a new project is easy. We have a sponsor, we might have a new program, we might have a new agency, we might have a new logo. In the old days, maybe a branded jacket or some swag, I think we call it. Beginnings of things are great. Then we get into the messy middles, and that's where work has to happen. But in my experience, projects don't end very well. It might be a pilot, or it might be a test, or it might just roll. It might until there's something new shiny. There's a new project. But also, actually, endings in the Western world, we're not very good at talking about endings of anything. Endings of employment. If we made redundant, what do you say to people? how do you end? You start a new job with confidence and a bunch of flowers and a new welcome party. When people leave work, there isn't a proper closure. You might have a notice period, you might have a date, you might have the day you leave, but the whole thing is complicated, and we don't address closings. And then we don't close meetings very well. Everyone starts a meeting well, but a meeting ends with people leave early, people go off their online, people just switch the camera off and disappear, and we don't pay enough attention to the cycles of endings. And that's a really interesting chapter about learning from nature, learning from lessons, and paying more attention as a leader to what we need to close well in order to begin the next thing well.
Yeah, and what I like is also that in a really good and effective way, we're being reminded that if we don't close it, we carry it, right? It sits there.
And a bit like too many screensavers open or too many apps open on your phone. Actually, that's what causes burnout and stress and anxiety and dis-ease. Ill health is caused by just too many things going on and burnout. But it's not clean. We can't do things well if we're still trying to do everything else at the same time.
It's these things where it's kind of done, but you didn't read the whole article, so you're keeping it somewhere because one day you're going to read it, and you're not going to read it, but you still feel the weight of having that folder in your inbox that says stuff to finish reading that you never finish reading. Right?
In particular, meetings rarely close well. Is everyone clear? Does everyone have the same understanding? Is everyone said what they need to say? What do you need to say to close a meeting well? And we really help organizations to get the right structure to a meeting in order to close well, on time, with clarity, and allow a pause for people to get their head into the next meeting, let alone themselves physically. It's really, really important.
Yeah, so what I'm also hearing in this is that this is also a link into prioritization, right? If you effectively have too many separate cycles open and you don't close them, you're not going to deliver on any of it because it's all sitting there in parallel. Yep. So what you're saying is effectively you need to prioritize closing out what you did and then start something new so you have better focus and capacity to actually, not just you, but your people.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah.
Then looking at a different kind of signals, you also talk in the book about disruption, right? And not getting stung. And as to me, somebody who loves chaos and mess and change and all that, the cyclical nature of a beehive operation is very steady state. Yet at the same time, if there is disruptions, if they are being disrupted for whatever reason, they have a whole raft of coping mechanisms, right? Yeah. So how do you draw a parallel in terms of learning from that system and setup? How we deal as humans with disruption and change in the workplace, and how they deal with change and disruption?
Yeah, this is really important. I think the first thing is to notice or anticipate what changes are coming. Changes rarely comes out of the blue. It rarely hits you like a surprise. There are telltales, there are early warning signs, and that's what the bees do. So there's lots of, the bees don't have a steady state. They have a steady response to many, many changing factors. So if I give you one example, on a beautiful summer's day with a lovely blue sky, humans think it's a lovely day. The bees know if a thunderstorm is coming because they sense the atmospheric pressure. And then as a beekeeper, if I go on a summer's day into my bees to harvest some honey, I need to use all of my senses to notice what is happening to the bees. So if the bees are stressed because of a storm coming, they move in an agitated fashion, and I just need to pay attention to notice that. Or I can smell if they are stressed because they stop making honey and they start making propolis, which is a very bitter bee glue to protect the hive. I can hear if they are stressed, because the noise goes from a B flat, it goes up almost a full octave, and you can hear the stress. So the lesson for work is, let's not go smelling meetings and smelling each other, but use all of your senses to notice what is happening. Ask open questions, listen to responses, ask your customers, notice what people are being said, notice where the negative antibodies are. And that's triggered by many different things, and change triggers a response. So I'm encouraging all leaders to use all of their superpowers of monitoring, of listening, of asking, of noticing, of feeling, of sensing, to have a better understanding of the system, or else they will get stung.
Yeah, and I love the way you phrase that. I talk often about seeing your people, and in order to be able to see your people, you need to have looked at them when things were normal or calm, right? And so that you also notice when the upheaval or the disruption is there. Because you can tell, if you know your people, you can tell that things are an octave up, as you say it, right? And you might not, you can at least should be able to see that as the overall dynamic of your team or your organization, of your group. You might not know all the individuals in there well enough that you can, tell it also in individual scale. But I think, because you talk about your gut and trusting your gut in that too. I think with regards to people, most of us, we're trying to figure out the why, but the why is not as important. As a leader, if you see that somebody is not okay or stretched or maybe not their usual self, then don't expect the same performance out of them, right? And maybe consider putting the work with somebody who's sitting there bright-eyed and fresh-faced and like, just tell me what to do. I'm ready, right?
And also, it's not just what is being said, but what is not being said. And creating a safe, psychologically trusted environment to get that feedback and to feel and notice and sense. Leadership and change management is a big responsibility.
Yeah. So going back to the signals, I mean, and then that leads a bit to decision making too, when there is turmoil, right? When something happens, bees go in survival mode, right? The operations in the beehive are survival. And so there is stability, as you said, in the responses. They see the change coming, and that's a whole other subject altogether. But yes, you should be able to somewhat see the change coming. But then if you do, many of us kind of going like, well, maybe if we keep quiet, it goes away, right? Because the workplace to many of us is no longer survival. But if we link it to purpose, if we look at purpose as the survival, right? We should be able to get to more standardized responses when things hit us.
Yes, if people are aligned to the purpose of the organization, then we're all in it together. As the old, the old days of paid to turn up 9 to 5, and life's not like that anymore. People have choice of where they work and why they work and what they do, and purpose and communicating the values of an organization is really important, so that you do feel part of a community. And that's what the bees do. The bees are part of the bees are 50,000 individuals working as a single macroorganism. And that's what we're hoping for in big business, because then everyone knows their place and how to contribute or how to behave and what to do for the best. But then we also need to make sure that our personal values and purpose is aligned with our work. And sometimes it isn't. And, but we need to notice that. Is it a job I just turn up to? Fine. And my passion is outside of work? Fine. But help people to align their own beliefs and values and behaviors to an organization. And then then the organization can do very great things. That's what we're looking for.
Yeah. And that comes back to the safety then, right? Saying, hey, I see that change coming. And instead of dunking down. I'm in there with the team. So I need to play my part in us weathering that thunderstorm and changing things. Yeah, you refer to organizations and the Beehive as superorganisms. I like that term.
Yeah. It's one big living organic structure.
Yeah, with plenty of interdependencies, but it should all be working towards one. Can we talk a little bit about the other people? Because in this podcast, I clearly obviously have guests. We often talk about referrals and about how there's different specialists for different subject matter areas. And what you chose to do in your book is to write the 12 chapters. And then with each chapter, you've invited somebody in industry whose subject matter expertise aligns to that chapter and asked them to write a response. And I have actually two questions about that. I'm just interested in what reactions were from people, and how do you go about finding these people, and why did you choose for it to be a response? To me, that feels like such a consciously chosen word.
It's a dialogue. It's each chapter. Yes, each chapter. I wrote each chapter and then sent it to an expert, and they replied. And my brief to them was, I won't edit what you say. I value disagreement and disruption and dialogue. Let's have a dialogue, which I've never seen in any other book, actually. Of this model. Tim Erschinger, who's an expert in organizational design, he replied. His opening line to my response about organizational design was, "I don't agree with Philip." That's the first thing I read, and I thought, oh my God, Tim, that's exactly what I wanted from you.
I put a sticky in for that, yes.
Yeah, I don't expect you to agree with me. I want you to build on the ideas and challenge, and that's exactly what we did. And it came about from a very good discussion with a dear friend where I realized I don't do any work by myself. I'm not an authority. I work in collaboration with clients, collaboration with colleagues, collaboration with different schools. And it just all of a sudden it felt right. There we are, sensing. If it feels right, it is right. And then the process of choosing 12 experts in their field was a real pleasure. They're people that I trust and like and admire. And I wanted to hear their opinion.
Yeah, and the book really reads as an invitation to look at our world through the beehive lens, right? And the wisdom of the bees. And I love those responses from the individuals you invited, because on top of your whole perspective, which is built on 3 decades of professional experience, right? Which is nothing to put aside. But I really like that you invited on each of these subjects somebody else's opinion in, and the responses are so vastly different. There is not necessarily consistency in how they go about it. So some really react to your writing and then build on up. Some offer additional concepts and tools and tricks. Some of them go very into the personal space, right? Particularly the chapter about purpose talks very much about not so much organizational purpose, but also you as a leader and the people who work in your organization. Whilst others keep it very work focused. And to me, that makes the book more valuable, because basically we're getting 12 plus 1, right? We're getting
it's fun. It's a fun process.
Yeah, and it's a great read. There is much more in there. I dove also specifically into the chapter on decision making, because that's also so if I would structure a book, I would start with decision making, because I'm working with organizations that are perpetually not where they want to be, right? And so without and I equate decision making to the circulation in the human body. Without decision making, there is no movement. And if you're not in the place where you should be, then maybe it doesn't matter much what your organizational status. If you're not making it till tomorrow, we don't buy the time to get there. Great advice all around in there. Before we get back to you and what you do, can we spend a brief minute on the bees? Can you share with us why we should want to keep the bees and what we should teach? There's actually a checklist in the back of the book, but what should we teach our children and what should we know about bees? Can you make a plea for the bees?
First of all, life on Earth depends on bees. I think it's 60% of our food is pollinated by bees. Einstein said without bees, it's the beginning of the end of the world. No apples, no cherries, no strawberries, all sorts of crops. The majority of food crops are pollinated by bees. So that's a very real reason why we should look after them. And the second thing is what should we learn? What could we teach people about bees? And the first thing is, like life actually, is be curious, don't be scared. Actually there's no need to be scared of bees. They don't want to sting you. They're not looking to attack you. They're busy in themselves. They've got their own work to do. So if you see a bee, don't swat it, don't kill it, don't run away, don't scream, don't panic. Just actually be curious. They are beautiful to watch and to behold and to listen to. Just don't panic, don't react. Don't get scared. And then there's a whole series of things we can do. There is a list in the book. But actually, don't go crazy on mowing the lawn too short, and make sure you've got some wildflowers, and just think about diversity of everything. Diversity in the world is a good thing. Diversity of flowers, diversity of crops, diversity of planting. It's all good.
Yeah. I love this. I will forever look at bees in a different way. Philip, if people after listening here want to know more about you, about the book, about what else you do, where do they go? What do they do? Where do they find you?
Great. I'm going to hold the book up I haven't got all the post-it notes that you have. Look at this. Look at this. The book is called BeeWise, 12 Leadership Lessons from a Busy Beehive. It's available on Amazon and all booksellers. There's also a website to learn more, which is beewisebook.com. That's all one word, beewisebook.com. The same for Instagram, the same for Facebook. There is a lot of love and a lot of following. And then my own work, my business is named after beekeeping. It's called Hive Logic, hive-logic.com. It's all about coaching and transformation and dealing with change. And it helps leaders to be better decision makers, better thinkers, better question askers. And that's what we help companies worldwide with. And just a point, everything we've been talking about, the company is called Hive Logic. It's not about logic. It's all to do with emotion and thinking and presence. But the company's called Hive Logic, and that's going to stay.
Yeah, and you touched upon the book that too, so maybe that's the great point to end, right? You're definitely into communications and people relations. You work with leaders and multinationals internationally or globally, but in the book you also talk about very much about how in communication, if you bring something with enthusiasm or the energy with which you communicate something, right, the nonverbal part of it has the biggest impact on whether people buy into it, believe in it. It affects decision making and how it works in organization. And you definitely bring a whole lot of energy that's infectious around this subject and around your book. And I felt like as if I could read that although those 12 contributing individuals didn't always agree with you, build on that enthusiasm too.
Yeah.
Very notably. So thank you for that, because that's always inspirational and energizing and inviting for us to think some more. Huh?
Well, thank you. And thank you for your curiosity. I love these discussions and the questions. The book has prompted some discussion. So that's, goal accomplished. Just the
for sure.
All proceeds from the book go to a fabulous charity called Bees for Development. So this is my gift to the world. Beesfordevelopment.org is a brilliant charity that supports families in developing countries to have their own bee businesses to pay for their kids' education. The whole thing is fun and it's a win-win-win. Maartje, so thank you very much.
Very positive. So a somewhat lighthearted subject about the difficult stuff of business and us working together, right? But thank you for this, and I'm glad you were here today, Philip. And thank you to you for tuning in, and we hope to have you back on the next episode. This is it for today. Thank you. That's it for this episode of the Business Emergency Room. If you are currently dealing with chaos or disruption in your business, please reach out. You can email, text, or call, and I will find a way to connect with you within 24 hours. I've helped others steer out of the storm, and I know I can help you too. Talk soon. Please like, subscribe, and share.